Late on the night of July 10, 2001, the North Ryde Police Department in New South Wales, Australia, received an unexpected distress call. Someone shot my parents. I think they're all bleeding. They're on the floor. What suburb are you in? They're not breathing. What do I do? What suburb are you in? North or North Ryde? Yes. And your parents have been shot, have they? I don't know. This is my... Yes, we will. We will. We're sending an ambulance now. Police officers and medical personnel quickly arrived at the scene, only to find that, out of a family of 4, only one person had survived. Seeing him huddled in the corner of the garage, the officers couldn't help but feel heartbroken by what had occurred. However, to their surprise, just 3 days after the incident, he was already anxiously inquiring about the inheritance. At the funeral of his relatives, he sang the song One Sweet Day. Later, this man used the government compensation to purchase a luxury car, behavior that naturally raised suspicions among the police. It turned out to be a story full of lies and greed. He had deceived his parents, relatives, and friends, and even lied to himself. Since his conviction in 2004, he has always maintained his innocence. However, on April 3, 2023, his appeal was once again denied. As of now, he remains in prison. So what exactly happened back then? Let's go back to 2001 to uncover the details of this case. The incident took place in North Ryde, a suburb in New South Wales near Macquarie University, often referred to as the Silicon Valley of Australia. This area is home to many high-tech companies like Microsoft, HP, Oracle, and 3M. North Ryde boasts a convenient transportation system with both a train station and numerous bus routes, only 15 kilometers from the central business district, making it an ideal location for the middle class to settle. The Gonzalez family's mansion was located at 6 Collins Street, North Ryde. It was a 2-story villa with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2 parking spaces, and a spacious lawn, truly a magnificent property. In 1999, Teddy Gonzalez purchased the villa for 20,000 Australian dollars and began renovations. The family of 4 officially moved in December 2000. Teddy was a resilient man, born into a poor family in Baguio City, Philippines, in 1954. He was the 4th child in a family that struggled to make ends meet, but Teddy never blamed his circumstances. Instead, he worked hard and successfully gained admission to the law faculty at Baguio University. As Teddy approached graduation, he met a young woman named Mary Lou Claridad, a junior who was 3 years younger than him. The two fell in love at first sight. Mary, the eldest in her family, was gentle and kind-hearted. And like Teddy, she was also very hard-working. In 1977, shortly after Mary graduated, the two got married. Despite Teddy's dedication to his work, he remained a very romantic man in life, often surprising his wife with small gestures like unexpected flowers or candlelit dinners. On September 16, 1980, their son Seth Gonzalez was born. His name held a special significance that Teddy planned to reveal on Seth's 21st birthday. 3 years later, on July 9, 1983, their daughter Claudine was born. Starting as a lawyer, Teddy began to accumulate wealth through real estate and gradually expanded into various business ventures, including audio stores, hotels, and other industries. While Teddy was highly capable, his wife's family achieved even more. Mary's brother-in-law's father served as the mayor of Baguio City from 1986 to 1988, during which time Teddy held the position of secretary to the mayor. The family had succeeded both politically and in business. In 1989, Teddy used all of his savings to build a 4-story hotel with 40 rooms. The business was thriving, but less than a year later, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Baguio City, claiming the lives of 142 people. In an instant, Teddy's career and home were destroyed. Worse still, during the earthquake, his son Seth was trapped in a stairwell. Teddy, risking his life, crawled into the crevice to rescue his son, an act of bravery that left him with a chronic ligament injury. Fortunately, the entire family emerged unscathed. Teddy and Mary believed they were blessed by a higher power. They rekindled their determination to rebuild their lives, but this time, they decided to emigrate to Australia, where Mary's sister Emily and her family were already living. In 1990, Teddy reviewed and retook the exams to obtain his law license in Australia. By 1993, He had opened an immigration law office, with Mary handling the internal management and coordination. Teddy took charge of external affairs and client acquisition. His skills quickly brought in a steady stream of clients, allowing them to swiftly join the middle class within their community. As devout Catholics, Teddy and Mary not only set up a home altar but also attended Mass 3 to 4 times a week. They placed great importance on their children's education, hoping they would achieve even greater success than themselves. As a result, they spared no expense in investing in their children's education while clearly rewarding and disciplining them to keep their focus on their studies. However, this inadvertently sowed the seeds of a tragedy that would unfold years later. On July 10, 2001, both Teddy and Mary drove separately to work while their son Seth had a busy day ahead. In the morning, he attended school, then spent the afternoon at his father's law office. That evening, he had plans with friends. Meanwhile, their daughter Claudine, enjoying her summer break, stayed home to relax, spending her time reading and chatting with friends. Yesterday had been Claudine's 18th birthday, and she still wanted to continue celebrating, texting her friends to make plans. But before she could finalize those plans, Claudine suddenly lost all contact at 11:45 p.m. Seth returned home. Within 3 minutes, he immediately called the police. This was the call you heard at the beginning of the video. Well, we're sending an ambulance now. Seth immediately ran to his neighbors for help, telling them, I saw 2 figures. The neighbors, in a panic, called the police again. Seeing that Seth still wanted to rush into the house, one neighbor held him back. Suddenly, Seth shouted, I know CPR, and before he could finish his sentence, he darted into the house. The neighbor, risking his own safety, followed Seth and dragged him back outside. Although the police and medical personnel arrived within minutes, it was already too late. Teddy, 46, Mary, 43, and their 18-year-old daughter Claudine were all dead. The medical staff discovered that none of them had been shot. They had been killed with a sharp object, with Mary's severe neck wound being particularly notable. A canine unit was then deployed to search for the 2 figures Seth claimed to have seen, but perhaps due to the rain that night, the dog couldn't find any traces. Seeing Seth collapse to the ground in despair, Senior Officer Mike approached to comfort him before asking about any recent unusual events. Seth recounted, after my sister's birthday party the night before, while the whole family was driving home, we were attacked on the road. A car sped past us, and someone yelled, Die, you Asians. That statement caught Mike's attention. He had been puzzled by the strange writing on the wall at the crime scene, but now he had alleged it could be a targeted attack against Asians. At 3 a.m. on July 11th, Seth provided the police with details of his activities that day. He explained that at the time of the crime, he had been out with friends, and the meeting wasn't spontaneous, it had been planned the day before. With a clear alibi, the police ruled out Seth as a suspect. On July 13th, Seth held a press conference and offered a $100,000 odd reward for any leads. It's a picture of the 4 corners of the world. In my world, we were the 4, he added, my family, friends, and myself would like to ask anyone out there to please help us. However, as the investigation delved deeper, numerous doubts began to arise, suggesting that this might not have been an attack targeting Asians. First, nearly $1,000 odd in cash remained untouched in Teddy and Mary's wallets, indicating that the motive was not robbery. The house was remarkably clean and tidy despite the fact that closets and drawers in every room had been left open, with the clothes inside neatly arranged as if on display. All 3 victims had been brutally murdered, with Mary suffering a severe neck wound. Claudine had sustained 7 stab wounds and multiple blunt force injuries. Force injuries were evidenced by the dent in the wall of her room. 2 knives missing from the kitchen were later identified as matching the victim's wounds. The 6 dogs in the house were unharmed and had been locked in the laundry room. The only sign of forced entry was in the kitchen, yet no fingerprints were found on the kitchen countertop. The investigation revealed that the window frame had been broken outwards. At the time of the crime, the victim's times of death varied, with the entire ordeal lasting at least 3 hours. After measuring the victim's body temperatures, investigators discovered that Claudine and Mary's body temperatures were lower than Teddy's, indicating that the mother and daughter had died first. Blood found on a briefcase and handbag at the scene suggested they had been deliberately placed there afterward rather than dropped during a struggle. This evidence led the police to shift the focus of their investigation. The first step was to determine the exact time of death for each victim by examining the logs of the last phone calls. They deduced that Claudine was likely murdered between 4:10 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. as her last text message was sent at 4:10 p.m., and the open book on her desk indicated she was studying at the time. Mary's time of death was estimated to be around 5:30 p.m. that day. She left work at 4:50 p.m. and would have driven home in 30 to 40 minutes. She was likely killed as soon as she entered the house, which was evident from the shoes she was still wearing. Normally, after arriving home, she would have changed her shoes and placed her handbag in one of two specific spots. Teddy's time of death was estimated to be around 7 p.m. After leaving work at 6:23 p.m., he made 2 phone calls to his home. Teddy was likely killed as soon as he entered the house, as indicated by his work attire and the briefcase beside him. If this had been an attack targeting Asians, the assailant wouldn't have patiently waited for each family member to return home, nor would they have forgotten to bring a weapon, forcing them to use whatever was available on the scene. After killing everyone, the perpetrator even took the time to shower, as evidenced by the water found on the bathroom floor. 6 days after the incident, the police asked Seth to recount the events of that night in detail. This time, they noticed inconsistencies in his story. Seth claimed that he arrived at the front of his house around 6 p.m. but didn't get out of the car because he received a text message from friends saying that dinner had been delayed by 2 hours. With it raining at the time, Seth chose not to go inside and instead called the house phone, but no one answered. He then drove to another location, intending to meet up with a different friend in Blackdown, a town 28 kilometers away. Since this friend had recently moved, Seth spent 2 hours searching for the new address without success. He finally met his friend at 8 p.m. and the two had dinner and played video games together. Seth stated that he drove home at 11:45 p.m. and then called the police. He particularly emphasized that when he found his sister Claudine, she was bleeding, and he had attempted to administer first aid. However, the claim that Seth couldn't find his friend's new address after searching for 2 hours was clearly illogical. Additionally, the report directly contradicted Seth's second statement. Claudine had been dead for a considerable time before being discovered, so she could not have been bleeding, and her heart was certainly no longer beating. Furthermore, there were no signs of CPR having been performed on her body. Seth had also mentioned seeing figures, but after multiple police reenactments of the scene, they concluded that the noise created by Seth driving into the garage and entering the house would have been loud enough to alert any intruders, giving them ample time to flee. It would have been impossible for Seth to see anyone if there had been someone there. This led the police to suspect that Seth, the sole survivor of the family, might be deeply involved in the crime. They focused on searching his room and discovered a piece of clothing with traces of blue paint that matched the writing on the wall at the crime scene. They also seized his computer and an empty shoebox. By purchasing an identical pair of shoes, the police compared them with the bloody footprints at the scene and found a match. Furthermore, Seth's internet search history from February to July 2001, spanning nearly 6 months, was filled with searches related to plant poisons. Following this lead, the police discovered that Seth had purchased highly toxic plant seeds on June 24, though the name of the plant was prohibited from being disclosed under a government order. Coincidentally, a week before the murders, on July 3, Seth's mother Mary had been hospitalized with severe stomach pain and diarrhea, requiring a day of emergency care before her condition improved. At the time, the doctors diagnosed her with colitis, as her test results did not align with food poisoning. However, the police now had reason to believe that Mary had been poisoned with those plant seeds. On August 3, during Seth's third police interrogation, he claimed that he had purchased the toxic seeds because he was heartbroken and had become disillusioned with life. This was yet another clumsy lie, but without direct evidence, the police were unable to charge Seth. They decided to release him while simultaneously wiretapping his phone and implementing a parallel strategy to trap him. Interestingly, it wasn't just the police who were suspicious of Seth. His friends and family also noticed something was off. For instance, on the day of the press conference, Seth deliberately met with the family accountant to inquire about the inheritance. At the funeral, he sang the song One Sweet Day, leaving more than 300 guests shocked. Afterward, he moved into his mother's car. 2 months after the incident, Seth lied, claiming he had brain cancer and needed $190,000 for surgery. He even sent fake medical documents to his relatives in an attempt to scam them for money. However, those fake documents ended up in the hands of the police. As a result, not only did Seth fail to get the $190,000, but his government compensation payments were also suspended. Running out of money, Seth started selling off valuables like jewelry, watches, and his parents' cars as soon as he had some cash in hand. Seth immediately ordered a Lexus worth $173,000 AUD. The salesperson, sensing something was off, cautioned him, saying, "This car is expensive." But Seth replied without hesitation, "Don't worry, I've inherited money." Seth's Aunt Emily also had a strange encounter on the night of the murders. Around 6 p.m., while picking up her son from school, she stopped by her sister's house. She noticed a car parked in the garage, but the house was eerily dark and quiet. Emily rang the doorbell 3 times, but no one answered. She was about to walk around to the side door to look inside when she saw a figure moving inside the house. At first, she thought it was a coat rack, but as she looked closer, she remembered that her sister's house had 6 dogs, yet she hadn't heard a single bark. The more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt, so she took her son home. She distinctly recalled that it hadn't started raining at that time. In addition to Emily, Mary's sister, one of Teddy's clients, also reported seeing Seth's car. This client had arrived to deliver documents between 4:15 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. and noticed Seth's car parked in the garage. Seth's car was unmistakable, a blue Ford that was easily recognizable. By 2 months after the crime, the police's undercover sting operation had started to pay off. An undercover officer befriended Seth by complimenting his fashion sense. Once they grew closer, the officer intentionally bragged about having an informant at the police station. Seth fell for the trap and asked the officer to gather information about his family's case. Following instructions, the undercover officer deliberately mentioned to Seth that someone had seen his car parked in the garage around 4 p.m. on the day of the murders. The police wanted to see how Seth would try to cover up this lie. Sure enough, after learning this, Seth quietly began preparing a second alibi. By January 2002, he casually confronted the police and changed his story, claiming, "I actually arrived home before 4:30 p.m. but didn't go inside. Instead, I took a taxi from home to a brothel to unwind." Seth explained that he hadn't mentioned this earlier because he was embarrassed to admit it. However, Seth didn't realize that his phone had been tapped. He repeatedly called the brothel, asking questions like, "Do you have security cameras? How long have you been open? And do you keep copies of your guest registry?" All these conversations were recorded by the police. More importantly, the prostitute Seth referred to had been on leave for a week and wasn't there on the days surrounding the crime. When his lie was exposed, Seth claimed he might have mistaken the person involved. He even arranged for a taxi driver to testify on his behalf. However, it was later revealed that the taxi driver had been paid $50 AUD by Seth to write and sign a fake statement. At this point, the police were confident that Seth was the perpetrator, but they still needed more concrete evidence before they could formally charge him. Interestingly, the crucial evidence that the police were struggling to find was unwittingly provided by Seth himself. After hearing the confidential information from the undercover officer about someone seeing his car at 4:30 p.m., Seth became fully convinced that the officer had an informant within the police department. As a result, he asked the officer to gather more information and even sent along a sketch of the crime scene that he had drawn himself. The sketch included carefully noted times of death for each victim. It's important to note that the police had never released detailed information about the victims' times of death to the public. Besides the police, only the perpetrator would have known these details. Moreover, the handwriting on the sketch matched the writing found at the crime scene. Notably, before Seth was officially arrested, a seemingly orchestrated event occurred on the evening of June 2, 2002. The police received a report of an assault around 8:30 p.m. When they arrived at the scene, they found Seth lying in a ditch with minor facial injuries. Seth claimed that someone had put a plastic bag over his head and attacked him, but he couldn't identify the assailant. However, after an examination, the doctor concluded that Seth had no head injuries. This clumsy charade gave the police a new lead. Seth had mentioned the executor of the will, who happened to be his grandmother. It turned out that on February 23, 1998, Teddy and Mary had created a joint will. The will stipulated that if one spouse passed away, the surviving spouse would inherit all the assets, and if both died, the assets would be equally divided between Seth and Claudine. The grandmother was named as the will's executor. The police were concerned that Seth might attempt another scheme, perhaps even staging an attack on his grandmother to make it appear as though she had died accidentally. The investigation could not be delayed any longer. At 8 a.m. on June 13, 2002, the police executed a warrant for Seth's arrest on charges of murder. After his arrest, little-known details about the family began to surface, shedding light on the possible reasons why Seth committed such a heinous act against his own loved ones. In the past, Teddy and Mary worked tirelessly and ultimately achieved the life they had always wanted. After years of effort, they accumulated a wealth of approximately 1.5 million AUD. They were not only strict with themselves but also with their children. Anyone who performed well was praised, which instilled in Seth a deep desire for recognition from a young age. Seth's parents had high hopes for him to become a cardiac surgeon, while they envisioned his sister becoming a teacher. However, in reality, Seth struggled academically and had a strong passion for singing. After graduating from high school, he was not accepted into any university programs for medicine or law. In 1999, Teddy did everything he could to get Seth into the medical program at the University of New South Wales. His parents demanded that he give up his singing and focus on his studies. They also arranged for him to do odd jobs at the family law office, hoping that even if he couldn't become a doctor, he could at least inherit the family business. But no one could have predicted that just 2 years later, Seth would drop out of school, claiming that he was too busy, so busy that he didn't have time to attend classes. Seth was not only the lead singer of the band Definite Viz, but also had a fan club and a website created by his fans. The website featured photos of Seth performing, showing off his physique, surrounded by beautiful women. With his rising career, there was no time left for studying, much to the frustration of his father, Teddy. By mid-2000, Teddy enrolled Seth in law school at Macquarie University. To encourage his son, he even gifted him a car. Seth loved the car and even had a personalized license plate made with his name on it. Strangely, after that, Seth's academic performance suddenly improved dramatically, and he consistently maintained high grades. Every time his report card arrived, Seth was overjoyed because his parents would shower him with praise. On one occasion, Seth even kindly showed his sister how to secretly change her grade from 75 to 99.9, but he was immediately reprimanded by his parents, who warned him that if he didn't focus on his studies, they would take away his car. Seth's sister didn't just tell their parents about him altering his grades, she also revealed another of his secrets. Seth had a long history of bedwetting, even into adulthood, and every time it happened, their mother, Mary, had to wash his clothes and bed linens. Mary would sometimes nag him, saying, "You should see a psychologist." This embarrassing situation became a source of ridicule within the family, and it's possible that this contributed to Seth developing the idea of poisoning them. Of course, Seth's parents were also strict with their daughter. When they discovered she was dating at a young age, they immediately sent her to Melbourne to complete her high school education. Seth even helped his parents by sending threatening emails to his sister's boyfriend to break up the relationship. Coincidentally, at the end of May 2001, Seth's girlfriend of just 2 weeks wanted to break up with him. In an attempt to win her back, Seth gave her a necklace and promised to introduce her to his parents. Predictably, this led to punishment similar to what his sister had faced. When Seth tried to resist, his mother told him, "If you go back to that girl, you won't be welcome in this family anymore." Seth realized that he was increasingly losing control over his own life. He was constantly being threatened by his family with the loss of his car, being cut off, or being disinherited. All of this felt like a ticking time bomb for Seth, and the trigger was his poor grades in 2 of his courses. He had tried to use a medical certificate for an upper respiratory infection to request a retake, but his plea was denied. Seth recalled his parents' harsh words, "If you don't study properly, you should go back to the Philippines. Everything here in Australia will no longer be yours." Seth was unwilling to accept that everything his parents owned would eventually belong to him anyway. He thought how much better it would be if he could decide everything for himself. On June 24th, Seth began his plan to poison his family. That day, he ordered a batch of toxic plant seeds. When he checked the order the next day, he saw that it hadn't been shipped, only to learn that the supplier was on holiday. Seth quickly sent them an email, lying by saying, "My mother is about to turn 60, and these seeds I ordered are meant to be a birthday gift for her this weekend. She saw them in Florida last year and loved them, so I was hoping you could expedite the delivery." In reality, Seth's mother was 43 years old that year, and she had never been to Florida. On June 29th, Seth received the seeds as he had hoped, which arrived on that Friday. After getting the seeds, he soaked them in hot water and then mixed the infused water into his mother's food. On July 1st, Seth's mother began showing unusual symptoms. By July 3rd, she had to be hospitalized for emergency care. On the afternoon of July 4th, she was discharged with her health stabilized. To create the false impression that his mother had been poisoned by food, on July 2nd, Seth wrote 3 letters and sent them to his mother's favorite food manufacturer, the police station, and the health department. The letter to the manufacturer read, "3 of your products have been poisoned and are currently on the market. Ha ha. This is what you get for mistreating your employees." The other 2 letters accused the factory of poor management, claiming they had compromised food safety, failed to recall the harmful products in time, and did not apologize to the public. Seth's goal was to make everyone believe that his mother died from food poisoning, thus diverting suspicion away from himself. He even pretended to have a stomach ache while at the hospital. However, what Seth didn't anticipate was that his mother would recover. Later, the police speculated that Seth likely extracted the toxin incorrectly. A few days later, on July 6th, Seth had a heated argument with his mother about breaking up with his girlfriend. Mary scolded Seth, saying, "If you keep seeing her, don't bother stepping foot in this house again." Seth was all too familiar with these kinds of threats. His sister had been sent to Melbourne to study because of a similar situation. Seth was deeply distressed and terrified at the thought of being sent back to the Philippines. He felt suffocated by the pressure, especially recently with his sister home for the summer. The contrast in their parents' treatment of the 2 siblings was stark. His sister received constant praise, while Seth faced harsh criticism. After his sister's birthday party on July 9th, Seth felt increasingly isolated by his family. His car had been confiscated, his allowance reduced, and once his grades were revealed, he knew his situation would only worsen. As he dwelled on these thoughts, his anxiety grew. He no longer only harbored thoughts of harming his mother, but now also considered eliminating his father and sister, who would compete with him for the inheritance. Knowing that his sister would return to Melbourne on July 12th, Seth decided to act the next day. He had already made dinner plans with a friend for 8 p.m. the following morning. Seth went to school and worked at the family company as usual. At 4:15 p.m. he returned home, retrieved a baseball bat he had prepared in his car trunk but felt it wasn't enough. He then went to the kitchen and took the 2 longest knives he could find. Seth quietly went upstairs to his sister's room, and at that moment, all the resentment and humiliation he had endured over the years came flooding back. At 5:30 p.m., as soon as he saw his mother enter the house, Seth attacked her. By this point, Seth had completely lost control. He patiently waited for over an hour until his father Teddy came home. After finishing what he had set out to do, Seth began to stage the scene. He tossed around the briefcase, ransacked the closets, and forced open the kitchen window. Then, he changed out of his blood-stained clothes and took a shower. Finally, Seth tried to make it look like a racially motivated attack by spray-painting racist slurs on the walls. However, the paint residue on Seth's jacket gave him away, serving as the only evidence placing him at the crime scene. After 7 p.m. Seth disposed of the weapons and then met up with his friend as planned. They had dinner at Planet Hollywood and spent the rest of the evening playing arcade games until after 11 p.m. Seth was desperately hoping that someone would discover his family while he was out, which would give him the perfect alibi. However, when he returned home, the house was eerily silent. By 11:45 p.m. he realized he had to call the police himself. Earlier, while hiding at home, Seth had seen someone arrive around 6 p.m., which is why he initially fabricated the lie about being at the front door at that time. But Seth didn't know that a client of his father had actually come by at 4:30 p.m. and had seen his car there. Throughout his life, lying had become second nature to Seth. Hardly anything he said was true, especially when it came to building an image of success for himself. Seth lied so boldly that, in the eyes of his friends, he was a world boxing champion, a future music star, and the performance of One Sweet Day at the funeral had supposedly earned him $1 million recording contract. He also claimed to have a stable job at the family's law office and own the modeling agency. The models featured on his fan club's website were just a fraction of the lies he told. But lies, like soap bubbles, can only obscure the truth temporarily before they eventually burst. On May 20, 2004, Seth was sentenced to 3 life sentences and an additional sentence for threatening to contaminate food. Although Seth continued to assert his innocence, the jury in the trial took note of a rare poisonous plant found in Seth's garden. It was the very seeds he had carelessly discarded, which had now become the most concrete evidence against him. Seth might have been skilled at lying, but his attention to detail was utterly terrible. Remember the fan club website? You've probably guessed it, Seth created it himself. In 2003, the family home was put up for sale. The once happy home had now become a haunted house in Sydney that no one wanted to touch. In August 2004, a Buddhist couple from Taiwan, attracted by the home's location and layout, especially the altar on the second floor, decided to purchase it without thoroughly researching its history. They placed a deposit of $80,000 AUD. However, after reading about the events that had taken place in the house, they felt deceived and demanded a refund from the real estate agency. Initially, the company refused to return their money, with the 2 agents responsible insisting, "We did nothing wrong. If you didn't ask, why should we tell?" The situation escalated, and the local fair trading office launched an investigation. Ultimately, the $80,000 deposit was refunded, and the real estate agents were fined $221,000 odd for violating fair trading laws. Additionally, the local real estate association was required to revise its regulations regarding the advertising and sale of properties to ensure full disclosure to buyers. From then on, a sign was placed in front of the house stating this was the home of the Gonzalez family. The property's value continued to decline until, on October 7, 2005, a mysterious bear purchased the house for $720,000 odd. This bear told Women's Day magazine that they would not let the house's past ruin their dream home. On March 26, 2001, Seth's third appeal was denied. He is now serving a life sentence as a high-risk inmate at Lithgow Correctional Centre in New South Wales. As for the meaning behind the name Seth Gonzalez, which his father had promised to reveal on Seth's 21st birthday, it seems Seth will never know and has no right to face his father. Now, that concludes today's case. What are your thoughts on the identity and motives of the perpetrator in this case? Share your opinions with us below. Goodbye and see you next time. Kuck Nozaki, a billionaire renowned for his obsession with women from his youth to his old age, was willing to spend a whopping 3 billion yen to have relationships with 4,000 different women. He didn't hesitate to spend money to marry a wife young enough to be his granddaughter. These are the characteristics the Japanese people think of when they mention the successful businessman Kuck Nozaki. Then something shocking happened. At the age of 77, just 3 months after marrying his young wife, this magnate suddenly died, found naked with no clothes on. The news was a huge shock, leaving the Japanese public stunned and shaken. What exactly happened to this wealthy man? At 10 p.m. on May 24, 2018, a call was made to the Japanese police reporting that 77-year-old billionaire Kuck Nozaki had suddenly died in his 2-story private villa. Authorities immediately dispatched personnel to the scene, cordoned off the area, and began the necessary investigation procedures. Upon arrival, police conducted a preliminary check of the victim's body and estimated that Nozaki had died within 2 to 3 hours before the call, around 7 to 10 p.m. Although there were no external injuries, the autopsy revealed something strange. A lethal amount of stimulant was found in his system, and the cause of death was acute circulatory failure. Even more peculiar was that Nozaki typically did not use such drugs. No stimulants were found anywhere in his office, home, or car. The police suspected this could be a deliberate murder case due to the numerous suspicious points. Statements were taken from the wife and butler. At the time of Nozaki's death, his young wife and male butler were at home. Both were considered suspects. The butler, named Taka, had once run a small bar but moved to Nozaki's house as a butler for over 30 years after going bankrupt. Nozaki's wife, Saki Sudo, looked so young she could have been his daughter. She was 22 years old, 55 years younger than Nozaki. Sudo, a former model with a voluptuous figure, had also been a popular adult film actress. Her family was not well off, and despite her seemingly demure appearance, she led a rather indulgent lifestyle. She was known to be an alcoholic, lazy, money-hungry, and frequently visited nightclubs. The police took statements from these two regarding their alibis on the night of May 24th. Sudo's account was as follows. That evening, he and I were lying in bed together watching a sumo match. About 6 hours after the match ended, the butler called out, "Madam, dinner is ready," so I went downstairs to eat. At that time, my husband said that I should go ahead and eat, and he would eat later. He didn't want to eat and would stay in bed to watch another sumo match. After dinner, I stayed on the first floor until 10 p.m. before going upstairs to sleep. That was when I discovered my husband naked on the sofa with his head tilted back. I ran over, but Nozaki was already unconscious. Based on their statements, it appeared that Nozaki had died while Sudo was downstairs. The police speculated that it was possible Nozaki had ingested the stimulant to commit suicide while alone on the second floor. However, repeated checks found no injection marks on his body. Statement from a close friend. The police, however, considered the suicide theory unreasonable because Nozaki's assets amounted to hundreds of billions of yen. A few days before, his beloved pet dog died. He had called a close friend and asked if the friend could come to bid farewell to it. The friend had been present that day and remembered it well, as it was May 6th. The friend recalled that although Nozaki was saddened by the sudden death of his beloved dog, there was no way he would commit suicide with vast assets and a young, beautiful wife, living happily. The idea of Nozaki suddenly choosing to end his life seemed absurd. The suspicious death of his beloved dog. Even more suspicious was that the billionaire died 18 days after his beloved dog had also died under mysterious circumstances. Those close to Nozaki knew he adored his dog and often said he would leave his estate to the dog after he passed away. Upon hearing this, the police decided to investigate the story of Nozaki's dog. They exhumed the dog's body for an autopsy, suspecting it might have been killed by a stimulant injection. However, contrary to the police's expectations, no stimulants were found. Friends of Nozaki noted that he loved his dog more than his young wife. While working, Nozaki would occasionally call home to ask the butler about the dog's well-being. Did the security cameras capture anything? Upon reviewing footage from the 8 external cameras, the police found no signs of anyone suspicious attempting to break in from the outside. Only 2 people were inside the house, the butler and Nozaki's young wife. The police started to consider who would benefit most from Nozaki's death. All suspicions pointed to the primary suspect, the young wife, Sudo. After gathering statements and conducting an initial investigation, Sudo emerged as the prime suspect for several reasons. Firstly, despite her initial seemingly frantic statement, she quickly became preoccupied with establishing her alibi to the police, showing no signs of grief or sadness over her husband's death. Secondly, during Nozaki's funeral, Sudo appeared cold and indifferent, even casually playing games on her phone. Thirdly, after Nozaki's death, Puto requested an art company appraise a painting owned by Nozaki, suggesting she planned to sell at least one of his valuable artworks. Fourthly, a few weeks after the funeral, Puto swiftly moved to liquidate Nozaki's assets. She unilaterally appointed herself as president of his company and transferred over $300,000 from the company's treasury to her bank account, planning to relocate abroad. However, Puto claimed she had no reason to be suspected. She argued that she was disadvantaged by her husband's death because there was a condition in their marriage that required Nozaki to deposit 1 million yen into her bank account every month from the day they married. Puto insisted that Nozaki's death left her at an emotional and financial loss, but the situation appeared far more complicated than Puto's simple explanation. Shortly after, the police discovered a suspicious detail in Nozaki's will. The document stated that Nozaki would leave 3.5 billion yen of his assets to Puto immediately before his death. Nozaki's total assets were around 5 billion yen, meaning he left almost all his wealth to Puto. If this were true, Nozaki's death would benefit Puto immensely. Not just marginally, the police questioned Puto, is this handwritten will genuinely from Nozaki? Puto scoffed, ridiculous. Are you suggesting I forged the will? And what's wrong with my husband giving me a monthly allowance of 1 million yen? The police responded, "No. I didn't mean it's an issue, it's just a bit confusing." Anyone could see that the young wife stood to gain the most from Nozaki's death. However, the police lacked evidence to prove Pudo was the murderer. Additionally, Pudo continued to deny any involvement in her husband's death, maintaining her silence against all accusations from the police. The case was widely reported in the media, and many mocked the police for their incompetence in finding evidence while it seemed obvious to everyone else that the young wife was the culprit. Nozaki's rags to riches story also became a hot topic. Once dirt poor, Nozaki was born in Tanabe, a Wakayama prefecture, in 1941, the third of 7 children in a struggling family. He left school after junior high to start working and support himself. After finishing junior high, he worked at a foundry, collecting iron powder and scrap iron to sell to junk dealers, saving every penny. Because he had no money and wasn't attractive, no women were interested in him. This made Nozaki envious of the wealthy men who were always drinking and cozying up to beautiful women at bars. His own reflection was the stark opposite, akin to something out of a horror movie or a tale of misfortune. One day, Nozaki saw an ugly man at the next table enjoying the company of 2 beautiful women. The man pulled out several 10,000 yen notes from his wallet and stuffed them into the women's bras. Seeing the women appear so happy, Nozaki realized that money controlled everything. Nozaki resolved to make money by any means necessary. Nozaki made money by collecting leftover scrap metal and iron powder from factories, selling them to junk shops to earn extra cash. He took a job delivering beer to entertainment districts at night. One day, while delivering beer, he found a white object in a ditch and picked it up. It turned out to be a condom. Nozaki realized that while everyone knew condoms were sold at stores, many were too embarrassed to buy them. With a bit of boldness, he started buying condoms wholesale and began selling them at entertainment venues. At that time, the average office worker's salary was 15,000 yen, but a box of 12 condoms sold for 1,200 yen. Nozaki made a lot of money without worrying about the stigma of selling condoms. He quit his job at the liquor store and began selling condoms seriously. With the money he earned from selling condoms, Nozaki decided to bet his life on the stock market. He made a lot of money from stocks, as his earnings became uncontrollably high. Nozaki thought luck was smiling upon him and decided to try his hand in the Tokyo real estate market. Later, in his book, Nozaki mentioned that the biggest gamble of his life was jumping into the Tokyo real estate market. In addition to his success in real estate, Nozaki ventured into the liquor trade, finance, and private lending markets, becoming a self-made man well known in Japan. Having endured much mockery in his youth for his humble beginnings, Nozaki now became a man who could buy the company of any beautiful woman. Later, Nozaki told a reporter about his success story, boasting that he had been with about 4,000 beautiful women and spent around 3 billion yen on them. He didn't hesitate to brag that there was nothing money couldn't buy. His memoir, titled The Man Who Bought 4,000 Beautiful Women with 3 billion yen, was published in December 2016. Another book, published in April 2007, was titled I Want to Sleep with Beautiful Women Until I Die, in February 2016. Nozaki and a 27-year-old model were involved in a robbery at his home, where 6 million yen in cash and precious metals worth 54,000 yen were stolen. This incident made the news. Nozaki responded, "Well, that's not much money to get worked up about. I don't consider it real money. I'll take it as a life lesson." Even after losing such a large sum, he saw it as a valuable life experience, and the story became a hot topic. After numerous fleeting romances and love affairs exchanged for money, Nozaki unexpectedly decided to settle down and marry a 22-year-old model named Pudo on February 8, 2008. According to their accounts shared with the media, one day Nozaki fell at the airport and Pudo helped him up. He thanked her and invited her to dinner. They hit it off and fell in love. Nozaki recounted that he fell for her because she seemed pure, unlike the other women he had met. They quickly started dating and decided to get married. In an interview with Kendai Business a few months before his death, Nozaki confidently stated that he would always be happy being married to Sudo. The seasoned businessman ignored all warnings about staying away from a woman 55 years younger who might be after his vast fortune. It seemed that while Nozaki had sharp instincts in business, he let his guard down entirely in his personal life with Sudo. If Sudo did kill her husband, What other motives besides money could she have had? After a period of happiness, someone revealed the truth about Sudo to Nozaki. They showed him pictures of Sudo before her plastic surgery, revealing that she was not a model but a former adult film actress. Nozaki was furious to learn that she had arranged for someone to push him down and then pretended to help him at the airport. He couldn't stand the betrayal and the feeling of being used for his money. Finally, after seeing pictures of her before surgery and photos of her with another man, Nozaki decided to divorce her. He called Sudo, confirmed the truth of the revelations, and informed her about the divorce. Afraid that her husband would leave her for someone else, Sudo tried to hold on to him but was unsuccessful. According to Japanese media, before his death, Nozaki seemed to have grown tired of his wife and was considering divorce. The reason was that since their marriage, Sudo had stayed in Tokyo and refused to move to Tanabe to live with her husband. During this time, the 80-year-old tycoon was rumored to have had relationships with several other women. Before his death, Nozaki was romantically involved with Misa, a finalist in the Miss Japan competition. Misa was 25 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and significantly more beautiful and elegant than Sudo. Since Sudo didn't return to Tanabe, Nozaki decided to end things with her and marry someone new. Nozaki's decisiveness put Sudo at risk of losing her luxurious lifestyle. This was seen as a motive for her to kill him and seize his vast fortune. The police theorized that Sudo feared being left with nothing if divorced, so she plotted to murder Nozaki to inherit his wealth. However, Sudo's lawyer claimed she was innocent. Despite the prosecutor's claims, there was no concrete evidence that she directly committed the crime. For a time, the case seemed to be forgotten by the public. After 2 years of deadlock, the sudden death of the naked tycoon, Nozaki, once again drew significant public interest as new details emerged. In 2020, when a drug dealer was arrested, the police traced the dealer's clients and they found Sudo's phone number on the list. This indicated that Sudo had contacted the drug dealer, possibly buying drugs to poison Nozaki. Upon re-examining the crime scene, police found traces of stimulants on the floor and in the vacuum cleaner at Nozaki's home. In early 2021, while inspecting Sudo's personal items during the investigation, police discovered her computer search history contained entries on how to buy and use stimulants. Keywords like murder and how to buy stimulants were also found. This suggested that Sudo had meticulously planned her husband's murder. On April 28, 2021, Sudo was arrested as the prime suspect in Nozaki's murder. On May 19, 2021, the Wakayama Prefectural Prosecutor's Office charged Sudo with murder and violating stimulant drug laws. According to police sources cited by Minichi, Sudo decided to remain silent and await the trial process. To this day, the case of Sudo Saki killing her husband continues to stir public opinion in Japan. Whenever it is mentioned, driven by insatiable greed, the former adult film actress ultimately faced retribution. Not only did she fail to inherit the money, but she also faced severe penalties for murder. The fate of the once flamboyant billionaire became a never-ending topic of discussion. He enjoyed a life of luxury but met a tragic end because of it. What are your thoughts on this relationship and the case? Feel free to comment and share your perspective. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Documentary Files. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch my video. Your support means the world to me, and I cannot thank you enough for choosing to spend your valuable time here. Every single view, like, comment, and share that you give is an incredible source of motivation and encouragement. It's because of viewers like you that I am inspired to continue creating content, improving with each video, and striving to bring even more exciting, helpful, and entertaining material to this channel. Your engagement is truly the lifeblood of this community. Whether you're here for the first time or have been following me for a while, I appreciate your presence and involvement so much. Your comments and feedback are what help me grow and push myself to deliver better content with every upload. Knowing that you enjoy and find value in what I create gives me a sense of purpose and drives me to keep moving forward. I want to kindly invite you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. By doing so, you won't miss out on any of the new content that I have in store for you. I'm committed to bringing you videos that will not only entertain but also inspire, educate, and make your day a little brighter. Subscribing is a simple way to stay connected, and it ensures that we can continue this journey together. Additionally, by subscribing, you become a part of this growing community where your voice matters. I always welcome your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions, and I make it a priority to read your comments because they are invaluable to me. Whether it's ideas for new videos, feedback on what you liked or didn't like, or just sharing your thoughts, I'm here for it all. Together, we can create a space that feels positive, engaging, and full of meaningful conversations. So please, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button now. If you're already subscribed, I want to give you an extra special thank you for being a part of this journey with me. Your support, no matter how small it may seem, is making a huge difference, and I'm incredibly grateful. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll always know when I've uploaded something new. Trust me, there's a lot of exciting content on the way, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Once again, thank you so much for being here, for watching, and for supporting this channel in any way you can. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I can't wait to see what the future holds as we continue to grow together. Let's keep the momentum going, so make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Wishing you all the best and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care and stay tuned.